His older sister got scared and tried to persuade him to give up. Even his father told him to let it go. He had already accepted the sentence and wanted his son to go back to school. But the young man was confident. He pulled a subpoena from a file folder. He was formally suing the bank. The judge took the subpoena and looked at it. It was indeed a court-issued subpoena. The young man was suing the bank for falsely accusing his father. He then requested the court to combine the bank's case against his father with his own case against the bank. Given how closely the two cases were related, the judge agreed. Just like that, the young man sat in the plaintiff's seat, while the bank president and their lawyers became the defendants. This high-profile case was being broadcast live nationwide. A legal news program even invited a legal expert for real-time commentary. The host asked, "How did the bank sue the father, but now the son is the plaintiff?" The expert explained. The son countersued the bank. He clearly knows his legal strategy well, but, the expert added, no matter how clever the legal maneuvering, it won't change the nature of the case. There's no way he can win. Back in court, the judge announced the trial would reopen. He asked the plaintiff to state the facts, reasoning, and the claims being made. The young man said, "First, my client, my father, was falsely accused of robbery by the bank, even though he never committed the crime. I am requesting the court to overturn both the first and second verdicts." The bank's lawyer questioned him. "Are you suggesting the court made a mistake?" Then he asked, "Do you even know what an ironclad case is?" Outside the courtroom, the legal show's host asked the expert, "Everyone keeps calling this an ironclad case. What does that mean?" The expert explained, "An ironclad case means the first and second trials both resulted in the same verdict. That means the evidence chain was complete and there's no doubt about guilt. Unless new, decisive, and contradictory evidence emerges, the verdict will never change in the final trial." Back in court, the young man continued, "My second claim is that because of the bank's false accusation, my father was wrongfully sentenced to 20 years and held in a detention center for a long time. We are demanding $200,000 in emotional damages." As soon as he said this, both the courtroom and the internet exploded. People online said the young man was bold. His dad robbed a bank, and now the son was trying to rob it again. The legal expert commented, "Originally the boy had little chance of winning, but a sentence reduction was quite possible. Now, by adding emotional damage claims, he's directly challenging both the bank and the court. That could backfire." The host concluded, "He's still too naive." Back in court, the bank's legal team criticized the young man, calling him ignorant of the law, but the young man wasn't done. He raised his third claim. The bank had severely damaged his father's reputation. He demanded a public apology. Fourth, he requested that senior bank executives come forward to clarify the truth, not only to clear his father's name, but to apologize to other victims who had suffered similar false accusations. The bank's lawyer warned him, "If you make legal demands without evidence, you could be charged with obstructing justice. You'll face prison time." Even the judge reminded him, "The courtroom is sacred. Everyone must take responsibility for what they say." But the young man stood firm. After the plaintiff stated his claims, it was the defendant's turn to respond and submit their counterclaims. The bank's lawyer spoke. First, the young man's accusations against the bank should be entirely dismissed, and he called for harsh punishment for such malicious behavior. Second, the verdicts from the first and second trials should be upheld. Third, the young man had damaged the bank's reputation and should pay $1 million in compensation. Online, discussions exploded again. Some said, "Ordinary people can't possibly win a lawsuit against a bank." Others said, "The kid's finished now. He couldn't save his dad and might end up ruining himself too." In court, it was time for the young man to present his legal evidence. He said, "Before submitting legal facts and grounds, I'd like to request that the defendant recount what happened on the day of the incident." The judge approved the request. The young man's father began to recall the scene. "At the time, my son was hospitalized and waiting for surgery. I went to the bank to withdraw money, but the savings account was under his name. The bank staff said he had to come in person to withdraw it. I explained that my son was in the hospital awaiting surgery and handed them a critical condition notice, begging them to make an exception so I could save my son's life. But the staff told me to prove he was my son, so I handed over the household registration booklet showing our father-son relationship. Still, they said that wasn't acceptable proof. Other customers at the bank began pleading on his behalf, saying, "This is life-saving money. How can you not let him take it out?" But the staff snapped back impatiently, "Bank money isn't that easy to get." The father, desperate, said, "This money is clearly mine. How did it become the bank's?" But the staff insisted, "Either your son comes in person, or you find a better way to prove he's your son." Frustrated, the father shouted, "He's lying in the hospital waiting for surgery. How can he come?" Just then, armed robbers stormed into the bank. They wore masks and held guns, forcing everyone to stuff money into their bags. When the robbers were about to leave, one of them noticed the father crying. He yelled, "What are you crying for? You're a grown man." The father sobbed and said, "My son's in the hospital, and I need money to save his life." The robber looked at him and suddenly felt sympathy. He pulled some cash out of his bag and tossed it to the father. The father didn't dare accept it, but the robber pointed a gun at him and cursed, "Pathetic." Just then, the hospital called, urging the father to pay the surgery fee. Panicked, he grabbed the money and ran back. Because of this, the bank accused him of being an accomplice in the robbery and took him to court. After his father finished, the young man addressed the court. "In the original trial, the court ruled that my father knew the money came from a robbery and still took it. They decided this proved he intended to rob the bank, either as an accomplice or opportunist. But the truth is, the robber approached my father first, asked him why he was crying, and voluntarily gave him money. My father's first reaction was fear. Under such circumstances, you cannot determine criminal intent. This is all clearly visible in the bank's surveillance footage." The bank's lawyer sneered and replied, "Maybe your father and the robbers planned the whole thing, some act." The young man smiled slightly and said, "There's one more detail. That same robber verbally abused my father harshly at the time." The opposing lawyer snapped, "Stop making up stories. This is a courtroom, not a college debate club. You haven't provided one shred of legal evidence so far." The judge also reminded the young man to present the legal basis for his argument. The young man replied, "Understood, Your Honor. What I'm about to present next are the legal statutes and precedents relevant to this case."